my pleasure to have Greg Maitinsky come up as a speaker from Go Beyond Collection Agency. I think I was one of the first customers in 2005 when you began collections. Greg is from Hamilton, and I found out about you through another real estate investor. Yes, I did, many years ago. And I've always given your name to everyone, and I really enjoyed having you as a friend. What happens is we get to know each other through business, and then if you become like-minded, you become friends. So it's my pleasure to have you here today, Greg. Thank you very much on behalf of the Canadian Real Estate Investors Association. Thank you. Give him a round of applause.
I have to apologize when Maria wrote, "You have a screen and the rest is your job." I thought it was it was an actual TV screen, and I brought my laptop to plug it into, which I can't. But I'm perfectly okay just speaking about it. And if anybody wants the presentation, I can email it to you, and I'm going to give it to Maria, and you can share it. It's not a secret presentation. There's no copyright. So first of all, I wanted to thank all of you for coming out, and I wanted to tell you how I admire what you do, because somebody suggested to me to run a PM company, property management firm, and I was thinking, oh my God, that's the last thing I want to do, seeing everything in collections and how things go south. So I admire what you do. Today, what I want to talk about is basically how you can safeguard your rents. The rents that are owed to you, the rents that belong to you. The tenant that went into your unit has to pay rent. And I guess most people would think that rent just comes and it goes into your account, no problem. But I'm sure you all know that that's not how it happens. There's a lot of work involved, and it's not just a simple equation. A little bit about my company, Go Beyond. We're nationally licensed. We collect for large property management firms, landlords, and real estate investment trusts. And we collect for small clients and large clients alike. So that's what we do. I'm going to try and keep the presentation in line with the rules that Maria sets down. I'm not going to be advertising ourselves. So the way I set it up is it's really something that's beneficial to you as opposed to drawing you to me. Okay. I'm not going to also, I got a bunch of clients on my slides. On the first slide, who we work for, I don't think I have to name drop, but you can look at them. So what you do is really interesting, because you take people off the street, they just walk into your office, they go to you and say, "Hi, I want to rent." And most people would say, "Yeah, that's what you do." They come to you, you put them in a unit, and that's how things happen. That's not how it goes, and it shouldn't go that way. One of the first things that I see with landlords and a lot of larger firms as well is that they don't do their due diligence. And I think the due diligence is the #1 thing that you have to watch out for, because if you don't do all the little things that you're supposed to do, you're going to trip up. One example is you take that application in your hand, you see the references, everything is beautifully filled out, you don't call the references. Big mistake, right? You shouldn't have done that. Even though they're going to provide you the references that they think are going to give them a good referral, it might not happen that way. So you can catch something by just making a phone call. So 3 phone calls you haven't made if you don't call the references. But first things first, when you're looking at your tenants, I think the first step that a lot of landlords don't do is actually pulling credit checks on tenants, which is basically a given today. You should be pulling credit checks. Not only credit checks, but there are a lot of different services out there that actually augment credit checks now. So, for instance, you could use TransUnion, you could use Equifax. In the United States, you could use Experian. But you have to sign up with one company or another. There's a company out there called RentCheck. I'm sure a lot of you know them. There's Neighborly, there's Certain. All of these companies, what they do is they provide you credit checks and a little more. So TransUnion and Equifax, they'll give you a credit check, that's it. RentCheck Credit Bureau, They actually give you a little bit of a social media rundown on the tenant, so that's a good thing, right? And some of these other ones like Neighborly, Certain, what they will do is they will actually have an artificial intelligence unit running in the background, and they actually search the web and look at what these people that are applying to you do in their free time, which can sometimes be interesting, and sometimes not. I've heard of one landlord, they onboarded this cute old couple. They were really neat and tidy, and guess what? They were selling drugs through the back door. I mean, it became a dealership in their unit, and that does happen. So even if you pull credit checks, it's not going to do everything, but it can help you at least filter out some people that are not that smart to hide their stuff. There's even a service out there called Honest Renter. I don't know if you've seen it, but they're out of BC. What they do is they have psychological tests. It's more for millennials, I think, when you're getting these students on. They fill out a questionnaire, and it's basically a mathematically based psychological test, and it will tell you if this tenant is a good tenant, if they pay on time, what their behavior is like if they're in trouble with their rent. So all of these things you can tool together and work it into your process. And the good thing is, all of these things are really readily available for you as a small, medium-sized, or large landlord. Even if you have 2 units, you can do this. You can pull a credit check. You're entitled to it. You can look at it. Now, I'm not going to talk about the privacy point of that or privacy aspect of it, because there are privacy concerns with what you're taking in as a landlord. But I think it's too much of an issue or a subject to talk about at this point. The next thing that I see with landlords, up-to-date record keeping. Okay, I've seen one guy, I think he was 60 years old. He walked into our office with a napkin, and he said, "Can you collect this?" And it was a name on the napkin and the balance. I would just never have thought that happens, but it does. So some people not only don't keep records, but they don't have any information. They just have somebody in their unit, and if they pay rent, that's fine. If they don't, well, then they have a problem. Now, record keeping is not that hard, right? We all know Excel. We all have a pen and a piece of paper. We can fill out a ledger, right? They paid this much, they owe this much. Very easy. A lot of people don't do that. What's more, now we have software on the internet that you can purchase for really just a few dollars a month, and it can help you do everything, including printing of ad forms, doing all your paperwork. So if you use this software, one example is Released. It's out of the UK, but it's in Canada. For a few bucks a month, it will keep records for you. You have to enter information, but it will keep your records. It will tell you when the tenant is late, how many tenants are late, how much are they late with, what are your costs, what's your next step, what forms do you have to fill, and actually it will print the form and it will have your digital signature on it. All you have to do is deliver it to the door, and that's it. So the point is, proper record keeping is very rarely in place. I see that all the time. And then these people come to us and they expect us to do magic based on a napkin, right? We did. I can tell you, we actually collected it because it was a unique name, so we could find the individual. But if it was Roger Smith, that's out of the question, right? The next big thing that a lot of people don't know is all the payment platforms that are available for you, even if you're a small landlord or if you're medium-sized. And I was telling Mike here that there's a company called Tenant Pay, for instance. What they do is they run a payment platform. All you do is you give your tenants a number, and this number is good for this tenant to go anywhere. They can go into money market, any of the banks, even the Bank of China, if you have Chinese students, and they can pay directly, and it will go right into your account, no hassles, and it's there all the time. So for all of those tenants that are procrastinators, it gives them an easy way to pay. At least you're eliminating people that are just procrastinators and not professional tenants, right? So there's that. There's Rent Moolah. I don't know if you guys heard of Rent Moolah, but Rent Moolah is another company that does this kind of payment platform. And what they do is they give perks to the tenants. So Do you want to get Starbucks points or stars that they have, on your cell phone? Do you want to get little perks? Hey, use this company and all your tenants are going to get perks. And they charge a percentage, right? But it's great. The big thing about Rent Moolah is you can actually pay by credit card. So a lot of tenants like that. Even if I don't have money for the next 5 days, I'm not going to be late with my rent. I'm going to pay with a credit card, and then I can pay my credit card later, right? That's something that you can use. Now,
just a question.
Yep.
So the first one that you mentioned, what's the name of that?
It's called Tenant Pay.
Tenant Pay.
Tenant Pay, yeah.
And then this one, Rent Moolah.
This one is Rent Moolah. So Tenant Pay is based in Muskoka, right?
It's in Vancouver.
Well, Vancouver is but he lives in,
Okay.
he's got 2 offices, yeah. Most of them are in Vancouver, most of these digital companies, and Rent Moolah is just based in Vancouver, but for now, I think. But there are a lot of other companies that can do things, and actually, if you go to your bank, one of the big things that just happened a couple of weeks ago, I don't know if you noticed, but if you get rent by email transfer, do you ever get that?
Yes.
Well, go to your bank. I don't know if you've noticed, but you can actually ask them to automate it. You don't have to put the password in anymore.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it just automatically goes. No password. Easy.
Okay.
These are easy little tips that you can use, right? I mean, it saved us probably hours of work a day.
Oh, of course.
Because we keep on cashing them in my account.
He loves that.
Yeah, and we have these passwords like, what's my dog's name? I don't know. What's your dog's name? It's multiply that by 2,000, and then you got a lot of dogs.
Yeah.
But one of the other things that you can do is do social media searches, right? And there are companies now that are specialized to search your prospective tenants with social media searches. And again, this is all part of preliminary checks on your tenants. But you don't have to be high tech to see what your tenants are doing. I've heard great tips at a lot of trade shows and industry events. One of the tips, this older lady and gentleman walked up to me and they said, "We have no problems with tenants." And I said, "That's out of the question. It's impossible. I have not seen that, only in a few cases." And what she did is she literally advertised everything on Kijiji, but she would put in a long running ad on Kijiji. So it was probably 20 or 40 lines. I don't know how long it was. But she put everything into the ad. And if someone called her and asked about things that were in the ad, then she said, "You haven't read the ad. Not interested." Right? So she actually got people that would read through an ad, which is a pretty smart thing to do, right? I think these are just easy tricks. Yeah. Next thing that I did here is that if you got these people applying to you, you go out to their door, right? They give you the address, and one gentleman was doing this. He would go to the door, knock on the door, and first of all, size up what the frontage has, garbage or no garbage. Then when they open up the door, he would look in, and the answer would depend on what he sees. He says, if it's dirty inside and all that, he would say, "Oh, I just came by, your application is being processed, I'll let you know," right? And if it's nice, then he might say, "Okay, you got the apartment, congratulations, I just came by to say, congrats," right? So all of these are just very simple things that you can do. It doesn't take money. I mean, you can just do it yourself. I don't know how many units everybody has. If you have 2 units or 10 or 20 or 30, it's the same thing. I mean, I don't think you could do it on a 500 to 1,000 to 2,000 tenant level, but it's something that you could do. Right? Sorry, I have to still use my cues here. How many people have more than 5 units here? Okay. Do you have site staff? No? Yeah. Okay. So one of the things that I see is site staff not being trained on all of these things, right? So site staff doesn't know that there's a gut feeling. You know what the gut feeling is about a tenant. They don't know that they have to actually fill out the application. They don't have the application filled out, right? They don't know any of these things. They don't pull credit checks. But worse, what I see is your representative or your site staff is not allowed to use the tools that you're using, right? I mean, I've seen a lot of landlords that say, "Oh, I'm not allowing my site staff to pull credit checks. That's crazy. It's a lot of money." But are you crazy? I mean, they're the ones that are giving the okay in the end, I mean, it's a problem. So I think training of site staff and your representatives is a very important part of the equation. Now, I talked to you about available management software. There are a lot of them out there. I mentioned Released. I just wanted to mention a bunch of other names. Buildium, Property Vista, Yardi, if you know it, it's a pretty big solution. Some people use it. Most big companies use it. That's an important part. I've even found a company, and I referred them to one of my clients, that actually takes Bitcoin for rent. So you can actually pay your rent with Bitcoin now, which is pretty interesting. But one of the things that you have to make sure is that if you are a small-time landlord, and I don't say that in a bad way, you're not a big landlord, you have to make sure that you use all these tools, because it's not just for big companies, like the Real Stars, the Quadreal, the Greenwings. It's for you. You can use these tools. They're very easy. You don't have to sign up for big contracts for a lot of money. But if you don't run your shop as a professional shop, it's going to affect you in the end. And especially now with a lot of changes in the economy, which we're seeing in collections, you're going to get people that are going to burn you. You're going to get more people that burn you. We see that all the time, and we see it increasing more and more. What we see is we get more business now than ever, and we get worse business now than ever.
Can you give us an example? You're talking about the companies, what you see happening?
Yeah, that's kind of
Share it with us.
yeah, it's kind of an indication on what's happening in the economy. I mean, I don't claim to be like this big, big company that we know everything, but what we see from our end is that a lot of the larger firms are not paying each other. There's like this circle of not paying on 150, 180, 210 days, and there's more and more of that. There's more and more people getting out of these jobs in property management, being dropped daily. I see emails that this person is no longer there, this person is no longer there. And it's a large increase. So something is up in the last 2-3 months. We are seeing, our partners are seeing, our partner companies that are collection agencies are seeing this. So something is definitely coming down the line or pipe. I don't know what it is. Even though I was trained as an economist, I have no clue. Now, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about door knocking. So, if you're a really nice person and you're a landlord, I would caution against that. Because first of all, you're going to onboard tenants that you just feel bad for. And secondly, you're not going to bug them. But I would think that you would have to bug your tenants. If they're not paying on time, immediately. Door knock, where's the payment? I've seen so many payments go south because, yeah, I'll pay it tomorrow, I'll pay it tomorrow, I'll pay it tomorrow, I'll pay it next week. And then, oh no, we had a death in the family. Yeah, okay. Things happen. And then eventually, you're getting into this cycle, and it just feeds itself, and they never pay. Now, I'm not saying tenants are bad, but don't get me wrong. Most of the tenants are good people. They're the ones that make our industry run, right? Of course. But some of these professional tenants will go the extra mile to not pay you, right? And if you don't door knock, we've done a calculation on door knocking, what that does to you. So let's say you have, I don't know, 10 tenants, or even if you have 5, right? You let them slide. One of them didn't pay, that's fine, we know her, she's always nice, she works 2 jobs and, she's got a situation. Well, this tenant that's not paying is going to talk to the other tenants. And eventually they'll find out that you're soft, right? So that spreads in the building. I've seen a building where the great-grandmother, the grandmother, the mother, and this tenant, who was the youngest of the generation, they all didn't pay because, they just have each other, well, they're not going to do anything. They're not going to evict you. They're just nice people, And that's how you get to like a lot of debt. And then you come to us, and sure, we can collect the money for you, but then you're going to be paying commission to me. You don't want that. You want your money in full, right? I think so. I mean, if you could have your way, I think you don't want to use a collection agency because we're eating your profit margin, or a little more, right? So the calculation that we did was, if you imagine one tenant that owes $1,000 for 1 month, right? you're letting this person slide. This one tenant, you will have to evict or give an N4. And eventually you get to the point where you're employing a paralegal, you're evicting this tenant with all the costs of the sheriff, probably around $350, and they show up 6 weeks or 7 weeks later. I don't know how it is in St. Catharines, but I know Hamilton is
3 months.
3 months? Well,
No, it's 10 days for a sheriff.
But to wait
to wait.
for them.
Yeah.
Well, basically you have the court, you have the hearing, you have the order, you have like the standard order, which is like 10 days past that, they don't pay, then it's a sheriff 10 more days.
Well,
So it's what, 2 months,
well,
2.5 months?
well, depends. It could be.
Because they only have one sheriff, I think, working in St. Catharines.
Yeah. So if they're
That's
busy,
right.
you're just gonna
Yeah, you're gonna wait.
wait, and then you're incurring more of the cost. So all of these costs and court and your time and the opportunity cost of onboarding another tenant in the meantime, it literally ends up around, and I don't want to lie to you, but we calculated $3,000. List people on the credit bureau, list them up, because that's the only way you can let other landlords know what's happening.
Just a question. It might be a question to everyone. Like, if there is like an eviction record for the tenant, does the landlord and tenant board have a database that we can access that those lists are the people that are evicted? Have a record of eviction?
Well, it's a tricky question because it's public information if there's a judgment against people. So you can actually, I believe, ask the court, but there is no database of it. As a matter of fact, there was a company called publicexecutions.com in Canada that put all the judgments online and made a database of it and was swiftly shut down by the privacy commissioner because that's something that you cannot do.
That's too bad.
So there's no such database that you can do. You can sometimes search on CanLII, I would think.
Candy.
Yeah, which is the legal database, but only if there was a judgment rendered. So I'm not an expert in that. You'd probably have to ask a paralegal, but I don't know of any other database than your credit bureaus that would help with that. Now, the credit bureau, from my understanding, does not pick up landlord-tenant board judgments. It picks up small claims court judgments. So, yeah, the answer is I don't think there is such a database that you could just search and say,
Because that would help us, like, if we could run that database, okay, they have filed, the landlord filed an eviction notice to the person, so that we know automatically whether there's a judgment or not, we know already that this credibility of that person.
is lower.
I believe it's even illegal for me to give you a list of that kind of thing.
Which is really unfortunate.
Even if I said, here's a bunch of bad ones, like,
It's also your slander,
slander,
Yeah, and no consent.
Looking for reference, you say, oh, that person's a terrible person, you don't want to do that. No.
Yeah,
I don't give reference.
Straight facts.
Yeah, I heard you say I don't give reference.
yeah, because they didn't give you consent. The tenant didn't give you consent to disclose that information to somebody else, right? So you could get into trouble with that.
Yeah. Even the job references I used to have, that if someone called me and said, what were they like? Ask me if I would hire them again.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't. Thank you for your time. That's fact.
You can
That's
ask
me.
that.
That's it. But I can't talk about them, say they're good, they're bad, they're whatever, because I'm running them down potentially.
And it's only if you go the full way that other landlords will know. So if you sue them in small claims court, that's on the credit bureau. Next landlord that pulls a credit check, whatever 1245 Ontario Inc. There's a judgment. I mean, it's public knowledge, but again, no database of it, right? Now, and that's an issue. There are companies out there that do the artificial intelligence that, they pull information from the internet. That's a questionable thing too. Because, the internet is public domain, but again, disclosure and consent, there are issues there, especially with Facebook. We all know what happened. And I'll tell you, with Facebook, there's a really interesting aspect of it. Up until 2 weeks ago, my collectors were searching Facebook. They would put in phone numbers, emails, and it would pop up these people. You say, oh yeah, confirmed, that's the person, yeah. Well, Wednesday, that stopped.
You can't do that anymore.
No, they shut that down. It's not public. So they took one of the tools away from us because Facebook has all the scrutiny from the issue that they had and are having. So what collection agencies do, we take the accounts from you, or you list the accounts with us, and then collection agencies would have to give a certain amount of time to former tenants or consumers. And in Ontario, it's 6 days. So we send out a letter to the last known address. Could be an address that's wrong. It could be your address. But we have to send it out. After the 6 days, we're allowed to call and talk to your former tenant. Most of the time, what happens is it usually comes to some sort of a resolution. But I'll tell you, one of the big issues that we do see in the agency world is that when you're listing an amount on your listing sheet, saying, okay, this person owes me $8,000, well, the LTV order is not the same. So if we go by the principal, the per diem rate, the cost and the interest, that amount is usually way less than what the landlord actually claims, right? So what you got to make sure is that if you list accounts with an agency, obviously the only collectible amount that's going to be truthfully collectible is that order. If you want damages, you got to go to the small claims court and get those damages. Most landlords do not or cannot get the damages into the order, but I've seen companies that do.
Can you collect on damages after the tenant has already left? Because you can't go to the LTD when the tenant's gone, but you have an invoice for the repairs. So I just give you the invoice and say, can you collect on this?
Yeah, we do collect on it. The only thing is the credit bureau's regulations don't allow it to be listed on the credit bureau. So for most of our clients, we can only list the rent amount or the order amount on the credit bureau. But if you do get a damages claim in the small claims court and it goes to a judgment, sure, they can go to the credit bureau.
How about the utilities? Like, because if they don't pay, it goes automatically into your name, like Enbridge and water bills, utilities.
Say that again.
So for the utility bills, because it's the tenant responsibility to pay.
Yes.
But if they don't pay like more than a month, it goes automatically to your name and they send it to your address.
Yeah. So we collect on those,
Okay.
but the thing is, you'll have to pay that first,
Yeah.
because I mean they're going to shut the.
It's usually the water.
Yeah.
Just the water.
It's just the water.
It's just water.
Water goes on your taxes.
They put a name.
Not the other ones. They can collect the money from them, but they can use the disease, but
They'll usually go after them over the gas and the hydrant, but the water, you sign a different, at least in St. Catharines, you sign it.
And I can't put in the tenant's name for water.
That's right, and that's the same as
one is
St.
the only
Catharines.
one. And usually water is included because if they are 2-3, you don't have 2-3 meters, there's just one.
What you have to do for hydro for sure, you have to talk to your hydro company. You probably have to sign a waiver
Okay.
saying don't put it in my name, because what they need that for is a release, because if they turn off the hydro in your house and you burst your pipe because you don't need it or whatever anymore, you would sue them. So now you have to sign something. It's usually a blue form, and it says if you're cutting it off, don't pass it in my name. They try to put it in my name once in a while. I said, no, I'm not paying that. Oh yeah, we see that you signed that, so make sure you do that. Gas, I'm not exactly sure because I pay gas for everybody.
I know for sure for power. I mean, for most utility companies, they have something called an owner's file. And if you sign instead of an owner's file, it will go into your name automatically because it saves you the setup charges when you actually change names. But if you don't have an owner's file, it shouldn't go into your name unless you allow it. So what it is I used to have owner's files and I got rid of them. Because a tenant could change the power in their name. You wouldn't hear about it for like a month and a half later. They could be done 2 weeks later, and then they walk away with 2 months worth of power in your name. But the catch is and also for power, they can't turn power off from like November to May. So even if it's not in your name, because the guy left and put the power and turned it off, but it was like April. So I just left it in their name and didn't pay for the power. And I said, okay, put it in my name on May 1st. So then May 1st I started paying for it. That's when they can actually turn it off. And I say I didn't have to pay the setup fee.
That's fine. Now, how many people use sub-meter companies? No?
Use what?
Sub-meter.
Meaning,
So there are some companies, we work for one of the companies called Wise Meter Solutions. Okay? So what these companies do, they go into your units and they put on a metering unit. And what they'll do is they'll guarantee you, 90% of the funds. So if your average cost of hydro or whatever the utility is let's say $90 a month, they'll say, you know what, every month we guarantee you $80. It's yours. So then you at least have that guaranteed to you, and you're going to get paid for it, and you're giving a little bit of it to this company. Now, what happens to them obviously is they get stuck with the bill, so then they have to come to us. But then you as a landlord pass that problem off for a certain cost. It's almost like factoring out your loss. Most companies would do it at a certain size. I don't know what their size limits are, but I'm sure if you have a few units, you can ask and see that. Especially now, I don't know if you've seen the stats that came out, but again, this company sent out an emailer to everybody, and what it was is with the new legislation, every unit can grow 4 plants, right? 4 plants, multiply that for the year, that's probably $600 worth of energy for the year additional, right? Not to mention the humidity, the mold that can and it's not going to be 4 plants. Like, if you grow 8, who's going to say it's not 4, right? So that's stuff that's going to be hitting the fan soon, right? If it's not already.
It's a disaster. It's gonna be a disaster.
Yeah. So again, that's another way to safeguard your bottom line is anything that's energy related, try to outsource it because soon I don't think that hydro is going to be in. It's, they pay the hydro, and who they pay it to, you don't care, right? Just it shouldn't be you that's paying for it, right? I don't know that there's no legislation yet that came out in terms of whether you can ban it in your units, and a lot of the large companies are looking into it legally. And I'm sure Cohen Hiley is looking into it because they're the experts, right? But there's no word yet as to where that's going to go. So once we do the collections, we will forward you the funds that we collect as a commission, the typical collection receipt. If they don't pay, it will probably stick on their credit bureau until they pay. Right? So that's a benefit. And I think on landlord tenant debt, the typical expectation that we should have is usually 30% liquidation on your accounts. That's what we see with partners as well. So 30% of what you list is probably what you're going to get back. Mind you, you'd be through the legal process by the time you list the accounts with the collection agency. And there still could be a possibility that even the collection agency can't collect it, like I said, and then you can still go to small claims court and try to get these monies out to you by way of a garnishment. If you have a landlord tenant board order, you can actually turn that into a garnishment. I think the fee is $165 now. It's 3 documents you have to fill out. If you know where they work, if they work, you can garnish you the job, and the job will be forced to pay 20% of net wages every time they get paid to you. It goes to the court first, and then it's released to you. But the whole point is practice due diligence, because you will catch a lot of the bad things. And at the end of the day, if you've done your due diligence and you still got burnt, it wasn't up to me. I did everything I could, right? That's what I had prepared for you today, but you have questions.
Any questions, anyone?
I guess I'll start off over here then. So I'm in a bit of a situation, so I was looking forward to this meeting weeks ago, but I'm really, thank you for coming today. So my situation is that I do rent to students, and I have got verbal confirmation that they will be departing on mid-1st. Mind you, I don't have a mutual release, so it's just a verbal, so it could be worth nothing. Nonetheless, I have a court date for May 15th, which is for actually only about $1,500 worth of rent. So perhaps after this meeting, we could talk about how you can help me, because obviously I want to get you working right away.
Right. My first recommendation would be to, obviously, you need the proof. Like, don't forget pictures, quotes, hopefully invoices. Problem with these situations is they're always a catch-22. The court wants you to show them the cost of the damages. Well, you didn't have a chance to go in and look at what the damages are.
Yeah.
Right? So how do you know?
I do have a paralegal hired. Everything is very clean when it comes to paperwork as well. So the 15th is when my court date is, and I do want to get this moving fast because ultimately the loss of revenue I can handle, but it's the loss of future revenue which is really expensive.
Yeah.
It's a double dip, when this type of situation happens, and that's where it gets expensive.
We can talk.
We can talk. Okay. Great.
Any other questions?
Yeah, just to add to that, I mean, you're gonna have a hard time garnishing current wages, but landlord, the order you're gonna get is good for 20 years, right?
Yep.
So those students are not going to be unemployed forever, so get them in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5, 8. I got some now that are 18, 20 years old.
Wow.
I gotta use them. I have a stack of them.
People owe you money from 18 years ago. That's amazing.
And I'm sure you can. I'm sure they're pretty surprised when all of a sudden they get hit with a garnishment or something. Because now we're all on Facebook. They're 15 years later, they're all mature. They
got money.
Sneak up, and it's like, wow.
Yeah, where did that come from?
Yeah, so don't lose them. I just hold them.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can and make sure that you renew your judgments.
ODSP, can't guarantee.
Okay, I'm saying this on camera, so this is not good, but the thing is, the law is you cannot garnish or you cannot take money by garnishment from government funds. But the thing is, it's kind of silly because the bank is not allowed to know your source of income. So if I put a garnishment in today to the bank, and the bank sees it, they'll have to honor it. Now, most of the time, what would happen is it just goes through. Tenants that get garnished this way, and if they're smart enough, then they'll file a motion, and they'll say, you can't do that. My funds were from the government, but the least thing that happens is those funds are now held in escrow for 2 months, and they want to get to the money. Then you can tell them, you know what, we can get this done if you pay me or start paying me, right? So it's not the law, that's the law, but in practice, that's not how it works. Most agencies actually do put the garnishments in.
So I have a question. You mentioned a few credit check or rent check, Neighborly, whatever. I actually use Neighborly. Just started using it. It's great. It's free. Can you sort of enlighten us and give us? So I get this report. I get the number. What's it mean? So can you give us a little bit of information as far as like, if you were in our position and you were approving certain, what would the score would you look at? I know you just can't look at just one thing, but what would you look for on the credit report?
On the neighborly report or on the credit report?
If you're familiar with the neighborly report, sure.
Not that familiar. I know it's
Otherwise, just in general, the credit
Yeah.
report. What do you look at? What do you look at?
Well, on a credit report, the thing is, when we look at it, we look for different things than a landlord would. So what we look for is the contact information and ratio of debts, what kind of debts they have.